Okay, if you had the attention of the entire world, what would you say?
The entire world?
The entire world.
I just want people to be more tolerant and to understand that, like, yeah. I mean, I obviously it's for me personally because I can't speak for everybody, but I'm just like, I just want people to know Black, whether you're Afro Latino or like, I'm sure there are other, you know, just Black and Black skin. Like, the Black is beautiful and Black is smart and Black is capable. Like, I don't understand why the world as a whole considers us less than. It's just wild.
Welcome to the Inimitable Black Woman. I am Donna, your host, and I am happy to get into the interview. So, first question, what is your name?
My name is Izumi Morocco.
Okay.
I used to be formerly Izumi Rosas, but I got married and I'm still in transition of changing my name.
It's a hard process to change your name, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been married for 2 years. I'm gonna be honest, I've been a little lazy about it. It's like I have to go to the Social Security office and I don't really want to wait in that line. So that's what's been hindering me there.
That's okay. My friend, she just got engaged and she said, well, she's like, in spirit, I'm gonna have his last name, but legally I'm gonna keep mine because I don't want to deal with it. So
It's a lot to deal with.
yeah, so I understand the process. So where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Oof, wow, that's a loaded but not loaded question. My parents were in the military, so I moved around a lot. I was born in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, on a Marine base. And from there, I just kind of moved every 3 years. So I lived in Chicago, Illinois, and I lived in Maryland, and we went back to North Carolina. My family is my mother's Dominican, my father's Puerto Rican, and a lot of my family is from Miami. So sometimes, like, to condense it, I'm just like, I don't know, my family's from Miami, and I just kind of leave it at that because I feel like I'm from everywhere and nowhere.
Where are you based out of now? You're in the Bay Area, right?
No, I'm in LA.
You're in
My
LA.
husband's from the Bay Area. Yeah.
Okay. You have a very Bay Area vibe though.
My husband's from the Bay Area, so I think it just rubbed off. Like 9 years together, I think it just rubbed off on me.
Okay, even though you moved around, like how would you describe your childhood to someone?
My childhood was amazing and chaotic in the sense of, like, anybody who knows like a Latino household, it's like it's chaos and there's like always people and always dancing and always food and always yelling, and not like yelling at each other, just like Latinos talk loudly. I used to always tell, my best friend is also Afro Latina, and I would tell her, like, you're like, lower your voice, you're a little loud. She's like, I'm Dominican, I'm always loud. And I'm like, you're right. We are
Like,
loud. It's just vibrant and fun and um loving. I mean, my upbringing was mostly just me and my parents because I was an only child growing up, but I never had a lack of like seeing my family. My family was always either coming to wherever we lived or we were going to Miami and spending summers with my grandmother and my cousins. Just like colorful and vibrant and loud, and I loved every minute of it, and I still do.
oh, that's beautiful. So you kind of mentioned it, but how do you racially and ethically? No, how do you racial? What is the word I'm looking for? How do you racially and ethnically? No. Oh
Mhm.
my God.
Yeah, I
Ethnically?
think it's ethnically right. Yeah,
Like ethical though. I feel like I'm ethnicity. Wait, what is here we go. I'm gonna
yeah,
fix
ethnically, I got it.
it. What is your ethnically? What is your race and
What is
ethnically?
my ethnicity? So I identify as Black, and my ethnicity or my culture, my heritage, I am Latina. So I am Afro Latina, and it's really interesting because when I moved to LA, I was speaking to a friend of mine. He's older, Black man, and I was like, I'm Afro Latina. He's like, that's made up. Like, that doesn't exist. And I was like, there's me. We exist. I think just people, I think that's new. And I don't think people really understand. Even me growing up, like I would say I was Black, and a lot of my friends or even my cousins were like, "You're not Black, you're Dominican, or you're not Black, you're Puerto Rican." And I'm like, they're not mutually exclusive.
this is a big debate, so I'm really excited. Not debate, but it's a big topic of like, how do you define yourself if you are of African roots, if you are Black? And so you said like they're not mutually exclusive. What do you mean by that?
Well, you can be Latino and be Black. You can be Latino and be white. You can it's just it's odd to me that like people are just like, no, no, like all Latino, you're just Dominican or you're just, and I'm like, no. I mean, and then also I felt so vindicated when I finally did an ancestry. And I was like, you see here, you see all these African countries?
Me.
You can be both. And also, hilariously, the less than 1% native indigenous Dominican. And I was like, look at us. I told you we were Black. Like, y'all just didn't want to listen.
Not less than 1%. That's
Less than 1%, but definitely, I think 15% indigenous Taino Puerto Rican on my dad's side. So at least I have that.
Do you feel like you have that debate a lot though about like being Afro Latina, or is it like every once in a while where people now are understanding and getting it?
I think I'm also in this like weird, like bubble in LA because there are a lot of Dominicans in LA, but there are not a lot of Dominicans in LA. Not the way you would find in Miami or the way you would find in New York or on the East Coast. It's just like, I remember when I moved here, I was trying to find things that I normally cook with, and I would go to the grocery store where I would normally find it on the East Coast. And they're like Latin section. And I would go to the Latin section and it was all Mexican products. And I was like, I mean, this is great, but this is not my culture. Like, I don't cook with any of this. Um, so I think I'm in a bubble here where it's not really a debate, but when I am with my family or like just in the Dominican Republic, like I find myself often having to like walk by conversations and go, we're Black, and then like keep walking. Yeah.
Not the Black whisper.
Like I just like it's so mind. I mean, I my little brother for a long time, he's 20 now, and sorry, Sergio, for putting your business out here. But like I feel like for the longest time, like he didn't quite get it. And he's very fair skinned. He came out like my grandfather. Um, and I would just every so often I'd be like, Sergio, we're Black. Like his and his mom is actually African American. And I'm like, Sergio, we're Black. You
Like,
gotta
like we're really Black.
let go and flow. Yeah. Like so yeah, maybe I am the Black whisperer in my family. But I just, especially with Dominicans, because I will say this. I'm closer to my Dominican family. So a lot of times I will say I'm Dominican or around my Dominican family just because I feel like I grew up around them a little bit more. Um, Even when the conversations about Haiti happen, I'm like, we're all the same people. We are the same people. We are on the same island. We are all Black. We were all brought over here through slavery. Like, we can have this discussion. Let's do this. And some are like, cool. And then some kind of roll their eyes and go, here she goes. And I'm just like, and I'm going to keep going.
You're not gonna stop this Black whisper.
No, and I love that. I receive that. And I just like this is something I came into on my own.
Mm.
Like nobody in my family talked to me about that, and it was always like we're Dominican or we're Puerto Rican, and I never had these discussions with my family. I remember having a conversation with my grandmother. This is about to get real. I'm sorry, she's dead. I love her. She's a wonderful lady. She changed her ways closer to the end of her life. But when I was in high school, I had a Black boyfriend. And I remember my grandmother saying to me, Izumi, I don't want you to bring home any monkey babies. And I was like, excuse me, what? And I was like, well, first and foremost, I'm like 15. So what are we talking about here? And secondarily, what? And I looked at her and I go, Abuela, we're black. And I just remember going, but I was still trying to like figure it out. And I remember saying to her, my cousin, I was like, Ariel's black. And she was like, no, he's brown. And I was like, and mind you, my cousin is like as dark as Jaimin Hansu. And I just looked at him, I was like, Abuela, he's like so dark that he's what are we talking about? Like what? He's not brown. Like, and she just couldn't. I think it was just her mindset from my like her whole upbringing, right? That old school mindset. But towards the end of her life, I think she finally I'd like to think it was me, but I don't think it was me. Just like constantly
No,
working
I
at it.
need the credit. I will be the one to say it was you. I
I'm like, you know, my a lot of my Dominican family is like fair skinned, but like have so many African features that I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, are we really denying like your beautiful wide nose and your like the curl pattern in your head? Like, what are we doing?
girl,
Y'all want to be European so bad.
I don't know why. I don't even
I
think
do,
I mean I know why, but I don't know why. Yes and yes.
yeah, it's just been embedded in us to like down to like I'm sure like sure, you know, growing up, my mom would, bless her heart, my mom is a wonderful human, but she would ask me like, "Oh, are you going to straighten your hair?" And I'm like, I wasn't planning on it. You know, it's just like the thing that's always like embedded. And mind you, when I met my white husband, he's Italian.
He got a
I
little
had my hair straight.
and he's from the
He's he's from the Bay. And if anybody's seen Amanda Seals's stand up, she says there are white people and there are people who happen to be white. Chris happens to be white. Um, like I joke and say he's blacker than I am. Um, but my hair was straight, and then I spent the night shortly thereafter we met. Um,
continue.
we've been inseparable since the day we met. But I went in the shower, I washed my hair, I came out, and so it's like, you know, curly again. And he was just looked at me and he was like, "Is that your hair?" And I was like, "Oh God, here we go." Because all my life, um, I I think I'm the product of my environment. I've always been around white, like in white neighborhoods, and I've always dated white men. Um, Different kinds of men, but all the white men were always like, you should straighten your hair and you should, you know what I mean? You always look so sexy when you straighten your hair. So he comes to me and he's like, is this your hair? And I'm like, not this one, not this one. And I was like, yes. And he looked at me and he's like, why do you straighten it? This is so cool. Never straighten it again. And I was like, what? I I was like, what? And so, and even to this day, like when I straighten my hair, he's like, I don't know how you did that. It looks so much cooler curly. And I'm like, all right, well,
I'll yeah, I'll switch it up sometime.
I
I
mean,
That's beautiful. And so that's a good segue into the fact that I saw you on the Skin Deep. That's where I saw you, and I loved y'all's chemistry, like your honesty. I'd say like I feel like I don't know, you could just feel the depth of what you were saying. It was really connective. So I loved it. So then I was like, I'm
thank you.
following her. This is new. And I was like, I'm gonna enter her.
Thank you. I felt so like, uh, you know, that the skin deep is so vulnerable, right? And then I was just like, oh, I said too much, or I don't know, or I cried too much. And then, I mean, to this day, like they'll like repost things on TikTok and they'll post like the tiniest of a snippet, like a 30-second snippet. And people are like, run, she's mean, she's a bitch, don't stay with her, this, that. And I'm like, what are you talking
That is not what I got from it.
and I found myself like commenting like she doesn't love you and this, that, and the other. And then I remember I stopped because I was like having like I was like crying and this was like 3 months ago. Um and I started noticing like people that I work with on set or people who just know me are like, I know her, she loves him. Like you don't like you
Oh,
cannot deduce from 30 seconds on a TikTok how her personality. Like I think he said something so asinine. Like I was afraid I was going to ruin your life, and I rolled my eyes at the thought of him saying that he thought he was a bum. And so because I rolled my eyes, I got judged.
I had see, I only saw the longer form interview. I've never seen it chopped up, but oh, I didn't get that at all.
I mean, I think the people who saw the whole thing didn't get that, but like those that 30 seconds out of like what was it, 2 hours?
Well, yeah. It was, and I felt the same thing. I felt like it was playful. Like I felt like you guys were very playful and like,
I mean, imagine your partner saying, like, I didn't think I was good enough for you, and you thinking that's the most absurd thing that somebody said to you. You're going to roll your eyes and go, what are you talking about? You're so stupid. And that's what I did. I was
or
just
like,
like, oh
you
my
know
God.
what? I hate her now. You're like,
And
wait,
they hate, like, I was like, oh God.
I had no idea. I'm so sorry. That's like
I,
just not. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised to hear that, but I'm surprised to hear that because, like, I was like, this is so beautiful. I love them.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, then Chris just says, stay off the internet. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
That's so annoying. That's absolutely
The
like,
internet.
yeah, that's absolutely not what
But
I.
it's also like Chris said, he's like, you got to think about like these are probably people who have no life, who just spend their hours like saying negative things.
The internet exists and it doesn't exist at the same time.
Oof, yeah.
So, okay, you are creative. So, can you tell me about your creative passions, the things that you do professionally that are creative? Just like what's your vibe? What's your thing?
What's my creative vibe? Well, currently and permanently, I guess I would say, I work in the film industry. I do production and post production sound. Um, so I'm a production sound mixer, but I am also a post production sound supervisor and a supervising sound editor. As well as you said earlier, I teach. I'm a professor at USC for sound, which is really cool. I argue that that's the coolest job. Um, but I've been some sort of a creative my whole life. I was a dancer. I started dancing when I was 3. And I've danced on Broadway and for the NBA, and that was like my wheelhouse for the longest time. And then, you know, with dance, which I don't know if there's any other profession like that, but maybe gymnastics. So like with dance, you're old when you're 20. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I feel like you're in your prime between like 15 and 25. And so I think that had ran its course, and I was just it's kind of flailing for a while creatively. And I tried to like I was a competitive bodybuilder once upon a time, in between that, because it was like another way to like get me back on a stage in my head, and perform. And then I met my husband, and he was in grad. Sorry if you see like a blob like moving around. I think that's my cat.
I see.
Um,
I was like, that's probably
there's
it.
also 2 dogs, and they're just like milling about. But I met my husband when he was in grad school at USC, and he taught me. I think I was like in the telecom industry, and I got laid off, and he needed some help and taught me what I do, and it started fulfilling the creative side again, where I was like, oh, there's something else I can do. I don't constantly have to be performing. Um, and I just, oddly enough, I feel like, well, I guess it's not odd for me, but every time I talk to people who are on set, they're like, why did you choose sound? Um, I just took to it like it was breathing, and for me, I feel like maybe it's because with dance, I was always like there was always some sort of sound and rhythm and some I don't know, I can't explain it, but I did take to it pretty much like breathing, and I just fell in love with it. Um, and that's where I'm at.
Now that you're in it, what do you think has been kind of like you could say the tangibles, the practicals, but maybe the intangibles of like being in this industry that's like kept you going and kept you being able to like build your resume, build your skill set, just building your career in it?
Yeah. Oh wow. Um, so first and foremost, I want to say that I think that the way my career just kind of like, and it's still happening, right? And I started late. Like I feel like most people in the industry and doing what I do have been doing it since they were like 18, like fresh out of high school, or like they got in somehow, been doing it since they were 20. I started at a smooth 30, 31. So not long. Um, but I think it kind of like took on a mind of its own in a sense where I think there was like a place for women and a place for Black women. I think that when the Me Too movement started and people were trying to move away from having like all men on set, then there was a place for me, right? And then there was like diversity, and we want to fill. I hate to say this, but I think people want to check boxes, and I think I checked a few boxes. So they were like, "Great! Not only is she a woman, but she is Black and she's Latina. Great, we can knock off two, three boxes."
Three birds, one stone.
Yeah, and there a piece of me, like for a long time, I like was trying to grapple with that because I was like, well, I don't want to be hired because I'm Black or I'm a woman. I want to be hired because I'm good. Um, and my husband was like, well, what makes you think that you're not being hired because you're good? I think he really helped me see that. He's like, I think it's okay to take up space and say like, yeah, I'm needed on set or now on campus because let's be honest, I think I'm one of like three Black women in the film program teaching, which is bizarre.
That
And probably one of four Black people in general teaching in the film program. Maybe five now. Um, but he's like, that doesn't mean you're not good. That just means that like people are trying to like
open up spaces for you. It's a
open up spaces for you. It's hard.
it's hard because the reality is that like you are talented, you are good. The other reality is that when people are hiring and they're doing these things, they're normally hiring people that look just like them. Like they're just not. I think it's something that they don't they just don't even notice. Like,
And it's tough in that space. I know I'm jumping around because we were talking about my career. But
hey, we're
it's
still
tough in that space because then, yeah, you're now, it's like, I feel like now I'm the spokesperson, you know, even like on set a few days ago, yes, I am working. It was unscripted. It was non-union and unscripted. Um, and I thank God that I actually had a job for all of June, especially because this writer strike feels like it's not going to end anytime soon. Um, but even on that set, you know, they were doing inserts. It was a food show, so they were doing inserts of like people grabbing things off of a bar. And I sat and I watched for a little bit, couple seconds, couple of minutes, and then I finally was like, "Y'all want like a black hand, or like what we doing? We just gonna keep having white hands?" And I said it just like that. Like I was like, "What we doing here? Like we just gonna keep having these little white hands coming on in?" Or do y'all want like a Mexican hand? Y'all want a black hand? Like what y'all want? Because we got Mexican over here. And they were just like, oh, yeah, yeah, sorry, we didn't even think about that. I'm like, of course you didn't.
yeah.
But
It's
I will volunteer my black hand.
yeah. You're like, but if you need it, it's here.
And I did. And the director and the showrunner was like, oh yeah. She was like, I love that. I used Izzy's hand on two other shows, as like a hand model and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you need like,
Maybe you need more hands.
because in my yeah, because in my it was less about the hands and more like this is making it seem like the establishment that we're filming is not diverse. And it just bothered me because I could not be a background actor, but there was one Black person in the background. But you know what I mean? I'm just like, I need you to understand that like there are other people in this world and not just very Anglo
Yes.
hands and arms and
I think it's just not even a thought. Like it's just
it's not.
not even a thought.
And I like it's the conversation like I have, I love my husband so much because and I think a lot of like who he is from how he was raised. And like, Ryan is a good friend of Chris's. Like they grew up together. And so like I think he just through where he lived, he was exposed to so much more. I mean, his best friends are Black and Filipino and Mexican. And it just like
It's very
I laugh and I'm like, your little friend group's like the United Colors of Valentine.
that's very like that's very Bay Area. Like when I think California in general
Right?
is diverse. I think the difference between LA diversity, first of all, I think there's a lot of difference, but I think LA is diverse, but Bay is diverse and they it's mixed. Like it's not like
It's
diverse
mixed.
people. Yeah, like they're together.
Yes, because when I moved here, everybody was like, LA is so diverse. And I was like, is it? Because all the Black people live over here, and all the white people live over here, and all the Asian people live over here. So it's like, and all the Mexicans live over here, which is currently my neighborhood.
Yeah, none of the food
And
is
so
in LA. None of the food.
nobody's touching. Yeah, the food is touching. Nobody's inter. I mean, and even living in my neighborhood, which is, I'm going to say 99.9% Mexican. Um, because I think my husband and I are the 0.1%. And like the Australian couple on the next street. Um,
See.
but even like walking my dogs, like I would always see this neighbor and I would say hi to him, older Mexican gentleman. And then one day I was like, because I spoke Spanish to him. And then finally he like got up the courage to ask me where I was from and why my Spanish is so good. And I told him, and he was like, are you ready for this? Because I'm sure you've heard this. Oh, well, that makes sense. I just knew that you couldn't just be like, you had to be something else because you were so pretty.
Yes, I do know
Because
that.
a black woman can't be pretty. I mean, I've heard it since like I remember the first time I heard, I think it was 4, and it was this old white woman at like a Golden Corral that was just like, oh my God, you're so beautiful for a black girl. And I just remember looking at my mom and being like, what the fuck do you mean? Why can't I just be pretty? Why gotta be pretty for a black girl? Mama, who this woman?
Is this? Oops, get your friend.
Get your friend, because I'm just trying to get my free fried chicken at the Golden Corral buffet and live my best.
It's yeah, it's Wild West still out here. Like these things are
And he meant the best intention. You know what I mean? He was like giving me he's like, you are gorgeous, and I just knew you were something else. And I was like, what?
I knew you
I
couldn't be
was just like,
it's like
right? I was like, what? And my husband, I saw him seething, and I was like, let's just keep it moving. Let's just keep it moving.
dude, it's wild. Yeah, that is common. Yeah. I haven't
And
got
how sad is that we're like used to it, that we're like, yeah, we've heard that.
yeah.
And that I didn't bat an eyelash, and my poor husband's seething, and I'm like,
This is
this is not the first, second, or third time that I've heard this. Let's just keep this like
yeah, it's wild out here. It's wild out here. So,
it's
okay.
wild.
It's a
And
lot.
you're having to like, so I'm now the spokesperson, at USC, I feel like, and not like obviously not for the entire university, but like in the space that I'm in the film school, in my classes, because a lot of the classes I teach are multi-faculty, as you I'm sure know. And I'm, not only the young one, but I'm also, so like, even when I say things like, are you sure you want to do a boot camp on Halloween weekend? It's Halloween weekend. They're going to want to go out, and they're like, ugh, you young people in your Halloween. And I'm like,
Halloween has
wait,
been around forever. What are you talking about?
but like the fact that like we want to go out and like celebrate. I'm like, okay, but just, and I have to like then speak up for like the 2 Black kids that are in the class and be like, I need you to understand that like this is going to be perceived this way, or like the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident, and me having to explain, yes, what Will Smith did was wrong, but Chris Rock knows better. He shouldn't be talking about a black woman's hair. He made a whole ass movie about black hair. You know better. You shouldn't have said it. But they were like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, no, politely, you cannot speak about this because you have your stringy Anglo hair. And no.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly having to be that person, and it's exhausting sometimes. Like on a daily basis, I'm like, oh my God, not again.
Yeah. You know what's scary? Think about if you weren't in that place. if you
And
weren't.
that's the only thing that like on days where I come home and I cry to my husband and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted of being the, because I also like, we do not have all the answers. I am not like a scholar on like black, like all things black. And like what's offensive to me might not be offensive to the next person. And like, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. And so I'm just like, it's exhausting. It feels like a lot of pressure. And sometimes I come home and I cry a little bit about it because I'm like, I'm just tired. I'm tired. And I don't like, why is it always like, no, I don't think that was a race thing. And I'm just like, it was. Why are you denying that this was a race? Like, there was a conversation that came up about, I don't, Angel Reese. Is that the girl with the basketball? With
LSU.
the, yes, LSU, where she did this thing for the ring. And everybody was all up in arms about her doing it. Why she do that? That's so disrespectful. But like nobody was talking about the little white girl who did it 2 weeks ago. And another faculty looked at me and she was like, I don't think that was a race thing. And I was like, what? And I was like sitting there, I was like, how?
Fact is, she shouldn't have been talking.
And so it's just like I get in these spaces and I'm like, like, please don't bring, please nothing. No, not today. Jesus, I don't have it.
It's
So
a
I cry, but my husband says what you just said. Think about if you weren't here. Think about how it was before you started teaching here and how like my white husband had to be the person to do stuff like that. And it's like, what?
yeah, yeah. And
What?
it's a shame because the reality is, I think and I had another interview I did, and the girl, she worked in corporate America, and she was saying she always felt pressure to prove, kind of going back to like feeling like because I'm the only one and I check boxes, she felt like she had to prove to people that her being there was because she was good. So she always felt like she had to prove to people like she wasn't there just because she was black.
Oh, well, child, yes.
Yeah.
Because
And
like
it,
I have imposter syndrome all day
yeah.
at school.
I remember my first week at USC. I was in the freshman dorms and I was joking with this guy was like joking with me and he made a joke, well, you're only here because you're black anyway. And
Woo!
I know. And
Sorry.
I was like, first of all, like, there's not like affirmative action, I believe, for the film school that I'm in specifically. And I'm the only one in there. And maybe in this other girl. And it's like, it's not, it was just like, it was so weird because it was like, I know like I'm talented. Like I know why I'm here. But like he said that, and it's like there's always that quiet whisper of like, maybe I'm not like good enough. Because all I'm surrounded by when I'm in these spaces is white men. I think
Mhm.
it's so weird as like you're surrounded by people a lot of times who don't look like you.
I am proud. I know I say that like sometimes it's a lot of pressure, but I am proud and I'm happy that I can be a safe space. I mean, my first semester teaching, I had to like chase a student out of the room because she stood up and said like, "Hey, this is not what I signed up for. We're making the one black character look like an angry black woman and this isn't what I signed up for." And she was met with, "No, we're not making her look like an angry black woman. Basically, you don't know what you're talking about." To the one black girl in the class. And I was like, and then she got so upset that she got up and walked out. And so I, as faculty, raised my hand and I was like, I actually see her point. She does come across as an angry black woman. If there's a way for us to like figure this out, let's do that. And then I chased after her and I went out to talk to her. And as she's like in tears and talking to me, she looked at me and said, "Where have you been my whole, like, I didn't even know you taught here. My whole, like, I'm going to graduate in May." And I was like, "Oh, this is my first semester." She's like, "That makes a whole lot of sense." She's like, "Well, I'm going to tell all my black friends underneath me about you and to be like around you." And it's like, that was like so special to me. And like, that is the reason why I'm still going to fight and be like, this is, it's awful. It's even, I have imposter syndrome every day that I'm at USC. And it gets better over time because my husband keeps telling me you're fucking good and tell them to fuck off. But like, and this you can keep in here. I don't give a shit. But like, I constantly am like, I know I'm a diversity hire. Like, I know I am a fucking professor here. Like, I get it. I'm a diversity hire. We need to like, check some boxes and I check three and I get it. But, so it's when we're here on the first day of school and we're going around the room and the faculty is doing like what I call a dick swinging contest, because it is. Um, where it's like, well, my name is this and this is what I've worked on. And it's like, oh, they get to me and I'm like, I don't know. You can like look at my IMDb. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't do that because it's not me. But it sometimes you sit there and you're like, am I supposed to be here? I'm young, I'm black, I haven't worked on, Star Wars or Fast and the Furious 1500. I don't know what I am I supposed to be here. But then I have those moments and I'm like, I am supposed to be here. Or I was asked to speak on a panel and somebody asked me about imposter syndrome and I answered them very, very like transparently and told them I have it right now sitting on this panel. And that young lady like came up to me after the panel and was like, that was the best thing I've ever heard. And then she took my class the next semester. And it's things like that that I'm like, all right, well then I am here and I am taking up space in the good in the most positive way, right? Because so on those days where I'm tired and exhausted for being the spokesperson, I just remind myself that there is somebody there who needs me to be the spokesperson. There's somebody there who needs me to speak up for them.
That's real. And
Because I was that person. And when I was 20, I was like, I don't know how to speak up for myself. So,
what are like some practical things that you think people can do who look at your career, who look what you're doing, they're like, I want to do that. Like, I want these opportunities.
um, ask. Honestly, like there are so many times where I've been on set. It happened to me like a month ago where I'm sorry, there was like a mosquito. Um, it happened to me about a month ago where there was somebody on set, a nice young black man, and his the AD came up to me and he was like, Izzy, would you be interested in like teaching somebody about like what you do and like taking them under your wing? And I was like, yeah, but why? And he was like, because Terrell here would like to learn and he's too shy to ask. And I'm like, what? Come on, give me your phone number. So for me, it's like I always remember, sorry. I always remember something my grandmother used to tell me, which is closed mouths don't get fed. And for me, I like to tell people that like nobody can read your mind, right? So if you want to like be on the camera department or write or whatever it is, and you're in a space where you like, or you're at school and go to your writing faculty and say like, is there somebody you can put me with, or can I learn from you? Or I've had students come up to me and be like, can I come to set with you? Or I've said, do you want to come to set with me? And they're like, I didn't know that was like a thing that you would be willing to do. And I'm like, what do you mean? Of course. You just have to ask. So for me, it's work hard and just ask, open your mouth and ask ask your resources. Because you'd be surprised. People will be like, yeah, you want to learn about what I'm doing? Cool. How cool. Um, and my other side piece of advice, which I think is a hot take that people don't really like, especially in my industry, don't get bogged down on gear, on like specific gear, and like think that you can't be good at your job because you don't have this like top of the line expensive thing that will come. Work on your craft, work on getting good at like in my industry, it's like work on being a good sound mixer, work on knowing how to do your job properly, work on putting lavs on people properly, work on your boom technique. And the gear will come. The more you work, the more money you make, and then you get better gear and better gear, and you can replace your old, not as pro gear. Um, just baby steps. Work hard, be polite. Don't take shit, but be polite.
One of the things that we're kind of talking about is like the financial of things. Like, how have you been able to navigate? How have you? So we were talking about the financial things. How have you been able to navigate like financially having to like support your life through your career. Like some people say, I this is how I've had to do this. I've had to supplement this way. I didn't have this advice. Like what is financially the way that
Yeah.
you're to navigate this? Because money is a big deal, especially in creative. And I think we don't talk about it a lot.
No, it is. So I actually just had this conversation with a student the other day. When I first started, especially because like I was saying, like the fancy six, seven, $10,000 kit will like be there. Ain't nobody got $10,000 when you're first starting out. You're making $100 a day at best. Like, what are you buying with that? So what I did is I had the luxury of being affiliated with SC because my husband went there and I worked on a lot of stuff with him. So they were like switching out gear, and the sound department manager at the time, which full circle now my husband is that, who just got hired to do that. The sound department manager at the time was like, we have these old 442s. It's just a mixer, not a recorder, and has a good preamp. Sound devices, like we're selling them if you're interested, for $400,
Wow.
which was a lot of money.
A lot of
But
money, but
and
it's
like some
also a good little deal.
right, and like some NP1 batteries, and I was like, sick, sold, And we scrounged up the little money from our two little like nothing bank accounts, and we bought that, and then we figured out we like attached it to like a Zoom recorder so that that can at least record what we were trying to like do with this 442. And then from there it was literally like we would work on thesis projects or work on like outside projects for like either little money or no money in return for like a piece of equipment. So like different jobs paid for like one job we had paid for more lithium batteries and like two lavalier microphones. Um and another job then did this, and so on and so forth, and until we actually like got up enough money with our little part-time jobs or whatever and cobbled together, which at back then I was like, I have a kid. But it was like this little like cute, sweet starter kit, which I still have and still works very well, actually. So for me, it's just like you're gonna have to take the jobs, or like make it. I negotiated. I was like, listen, fine, I'll work. It almost feels like sometimes people would rather say like, oh yeah, I'll buy this piece of equipment for you than pay you outrightly. I don't know why. Or maybe it's because they can't pay you with a credit card, but they can at least pay for the equipment with a credit card. I'm not really sure. But it really helped me. They were like, fine, you need this like $300 microphone. I can do it. I'll pay for that. And then I worked for free for whatever that was, like 2-3 day job. So that's how I did it. And just piecemeal, I would say, buy the most, whatever industry you're in, buy the most important, vital piece of gear that you can get. What can you afford? Because if you're doing cinematography, I know cameras are expensive, so that's a little bit different. But like for sound, I was like, I bought my mixer first because to me, I could like, it's cheaper to rent lavs than to rent the mixer. So I bought my mixer first, and then I had microphones, so I didn't need microphones, but then I would have to, rent lavs, and then you start getting kit fees. So every time I would get a kit fee, I would take that money from my kit fee and spend for something else and keep going. And then, I got older and I got credit. So I was like, every once in a while, but making sure I could afford it. It takes time, but then all of a sudden you'll look up and you're like, oh, I have all the gear I need. What happened? Because there was a day where I was like, oh, I really, really wish I had a smart slate, but that thing's like $1,500. And now I'm like, I thought about it the other day. I was like, oh, I've just had this thing forever that like once upon a time I like dreamt of. It happens. But I say like get that kit fee and start spending that to buy things. And if they can pay you ahead of time, that helps too. sometimes when it's sometimes when it's like a personal project and it's not through a payroll company, like if it's your homie doing a short film, they might say like, yeah, fine, I'll pay you ahead of time so that you can get this gear. If you just tell them ahead of time, like, this is what I need, that's what's helped me.
What has been like your formula for taking care of yourself mentally? Like a part of, I know you said you cry to your husband, but it's like, what for you is like, if I could point to what helps me take care of my mental health in the midst of just life, what does that look like for you?
The gym, the gym, and also like, well, because the gym I think does a few different things, right? Like when you work out, you release like, endorphins, and that makes you happy, and blah blah blah, like the line in Legally Blonde. But there's also, that's, the gym is kind of like my quiet time in a sense, where like I just have my headphones on, nobody's talking to me, nobody's bothering me, nobody, like my phone is on focus mode where like nobody's bothering me. I'm not getting text messages. I'm like there for an hour and a half and it's me time. So it takes care of like a few, as well as I'm healthy and I feel better. Um, but also it took a long time for me to learn when to say no. Because when you're just starting out in the industry and in your creative space, you almost always want to say yes because you never know when your next check is going to come, or you're just eager to like get better and like get those hours so you can become union if that's what the route you want to go, whatever the case may be, or just to feed yourself. You just need to keep working. But I had a moment, I think it was like 2018, where I literally I worked for like 30 days straight, 12-hour days. Like I had no break. And I had like an emotional breakdown in my house. And I was like, I cannot, like, this is not sustainable. I was crying. I was a mess. And my husband just kind of looked at me and he was like, I know that he was my boyfriend at the time. He was like, I know that you just want to do what's best for us as a couple, for our family, and for like life and for money. He's like, but this one, like saying yes to this next job is not going to make or break you. You're not going, and I also said yes a lot because I was afraid of losing that contact or that connection. And like back then it was, I mean, it's still to this day, you work off of reputation and word of mouth and like rehires. The job I just did was somebody I've worked with 4 or 5 times. They and came back the next year and they keep rehiring me. So you're almost afraid when you're new in the industry to say no, or I have a trip planned or whatever. I just need a break because I've worked 30 days straight. You're just afraid to say no. And he had to sit down and have like a little come to Jesus moment where he's like, if you say no and they don't work with you again, then that's their problem, not yours. You need to take care of yourself. And that is honestly like the best advice I could give to somebody is like, you have got to like sleep and make time for sleep and make time for just the gym. If it's the gym or if it's reading a book or seeing your family, you have to make time for that because you can be in this industry and look up and be like, I've neglected my family, I've neglected myself. And then what do you have? Because just like the meme that goes around says, like, you're replaceable. Whether or not you think you're replaceable, you're replaceable. That job you can call tomorrow and say, I'm sick today. And guess what? They'll find another sound mixer. Trust and believe you are not the end all be all. So why are you making yourself sick for other people or losing relationships with family members? I had a whole student. She was like, I've been neglecting my friends and now we're in a fight and nobody wants to talk to me anymore. And I'm like, why'd you do that? For what? Your outcome was the same at school. You got the same grade. If you would have just taken 10 minutes to like hang out with your friends. So that was like the hardest pill to swallow. But once I did that, I felt free. I
Mm.
felt so free. I remember, I'm not sure how long you've been following what's been going on with me and my husband, but in 2021, after we got married, I was pregnant and we lost our pregnancy like a week after our wedding. And we've been working for Snoop Dogg for like since like 2015. And his producer called us and said, Snoop has another thing coming up. Um, are you available? And I struggled with it because I was like, I I love the relationship we have with dog as like our boss. I didn't want to like say no, but I had already had a trip planned to Vegas. It was a trip that my dad was going to be in Vegas on a work conference, and he brought me and my husband out there to like have some time away from the house since we were going through a hard time and just like hang out with him and see him. And I don't get to see my dad that often because he lives in Maryland. And so I was really grappling. And Chris just looked at me and he was like, "What are you talking about? Like, this is your dad. This is our time. We need to grieve our son. Like, if Snoop doesn't hire us again because we didn't make it because we literally just had lost a whole 20-week pregnancy, like, then he's not for us anymore." And I was like, "You're right." I passed it off to a friend, and guess what? I saw Snoop a month later, and he was like, "Hey, baby girl, I missed you, but I'm so glad that you got better." And like, you know what I mean? So just like, if you lose that connection, then they weren't for you. And that's the best thing I can tell people is like, it's hard when you're in the moment because you're like, I don't want to lose this producer, but it's not for you. The universe will remove things from your life that do not serve you. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And I've had toxic producers in my life that have been removed.
Blessing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a blessing in the moment. It feels like, what did I do wrong? But it ultimately, or like, I thought that losing this company that I worked for was gonna change, like my career wasn't gonna go anywhere. And what happened is that it got better
Mm.
because I no longer have this baggage, or I'm no longer working at this rate. I've now done this.
Come on now.
And it used to,
This. That's a good
it
thing.
used to, and it's scary, you know, when people come to you and they're like, this is, I remember the last time you worked for me, and it's like 4 years ago, and they're like, and sweet, this is the rate. And I'm like, oh, sweetie, that was my rate 4 years ago. That's not my rate anymore.
We've
And
upgraded.
yeah, and like the first couple times I said that, like not like that, but the first couple times I was like, oh, that's not my rate anymore. I got heart palpitations, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to get this job. And you know what? I don't want the job. And you'd be surprised. And people would be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure, we can pay your new rate. Or I've heard, you know what? I totally get it. I don't really have that budget for this particular job, but I promise you I will call you back on the next one when I do have budget for you. Cool. Thanks. Awesome. And at that, I'm like, but if you want a student, I got some. And they'll go to the student. And then I feel like I'm still winning because one of my students got a job.
Yeah. That's real, the like heart palpitations, a pupple. My God, this today, my words, pa pa pa.
But
Pitter pat.
it is.
It's that's a real thing. Like to ask for what you deserve, especially like if it's someone who knows you at a lower rate, or like you just or you want the it's hard. I sent an email today and I had to call my mom, and I was like explaining to her what we agreed upon, and like being like, I don't know if this person can understand it. She's like, just you agreed upon it, and if they ask you a question, you send them what we agreed upon, what we signed. They can't change your deal. Like they might not understand, but you just say, okay, next time we're not doing that anymore. Like it's hard to stand up for yourself, especially when it comes to paying things or when you know you need the opportunity.
And as a woman and a Black woman, there's a piece of you that's like, well, do I really deserve to be like hooting and hollering about what I deserve and how I need to be paid? And it's just like, it's wild to me. And I thank my lucky stars for my husband, who is always like whatever,
Girl, I can't say
being my biggest supporter.
yes.
And my friend, and my one of my really good friends, Charlize, we've known each other since sixth grade. And she is, I like to call her a world famous costume designer because I'm just so proud of her. But she was a costume designer for Air and Judas and the Black Messiah and the Whitney Houston. Like, she's amazing. And she was constantly telling me, like, you need to like ask for your worth. Like, don't ever settle for what you're not worth. Like, no, don't do that. And my best friend, Isha, was always telling me, like, don't you ever let somebody tell you that you're not good enough. And I just need it. Like, I'm so grateful for those humans in my life that are like, no, you're worth it. You're good enough. You know what I mean? Because it's hard. It's hard as a woman, and much less a Black woman. You're sitting there and you're like, oh, my rate went up like $100. Like I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean? My rate went up from 5 years ago. And like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's like, no, it's been 5 years. Like, I'm sorry that you're still at a level where you're paying that you can only pay for 5 years ago, but like I am not. And I have bettered myself. And so you're
Yeah.
either going to pay for me or you're not. And if you're not, then I wish you good luck and I'm going to keep it moving. And sometimes I do explain, like, this is why I cost this much. And I need you to understand that I've had this much of experience and this is where I'm at. And this is what I can provide for you. At that rate, this is what I think is what you'll get from
Yeah.
somebody who can work for that rate.
Let them know.
And you let
You
them know and you take it or leave it.
You dill. You have to dill. Where can people find you?
Where can people find me? My Instagram handle is at Izumi Marie, IZUMIMARIE. I think it's the same on TikTok, although I don't understand TikTok. I like to watch it, but like nobody wants to see what I'm TikToking about.
People might want to see what you TikToking, you know?
What I normally TikTok and Instagram about is working out and my animals.
Thank you for being open and vulnerable and honest.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for allowing a space for that. Honestly, it's needed.
Y'all make it easy.
As a whole.